Love Liberty Radio version 4.0. Prepare for launch.
OTC is go.
Pancapus is go.
PTC is go.
LPS is go.
Houston flight is go.
Pilot go.
STM is go.
Safety con is go.
STU is go.
LRD is go.
SRO is go.
CDR is go.
Launch Director, NTD, our launch team is ready to proceed at this time.
99, proceeded, 3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston.
Consequences so severe, so pull your trigger quickly, dear. Our patriots are acting up, let's punish them with fear. Hey, hey!
Hey, welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. We do this thing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and every Wednesday for the last almost couple of years, I've been doing an Ask Me Anything, meaning I answer your questions. You can send those over via email, ama@fppradio.com. I also generally on Monday will wind up getting a thread posted on Facebook and Twitter, and you can respond to those threads as well, and I will get your questions. This week I have one fairly lengthy question. It's a multi-part question, and I also have not necessarily a question, but a very, very nicely written compliment that I want to share with you. So allow me to begin with just the compliment. Somebody sent me a message yesterday after having listened to the show that I did on Monday, and they said, your 4.0 podcast yesterday was life-changing for me. Seriously, thank you. And I am beyond speechless. I honestly do not know how to respond to that other than say, you're welcome. And I hope that I'm able to wind up touching other people in a way that, I never thought that I would change anybody's lives. I thought that I might, change some opinions. But it's, just very meaningful to me to know that people are enjoying the show that I'm putting out and that it is having an impact in some way. So now let me jump into, and in case you did not hear the show that I did on Monday, it's episode 337. I'll post the link in the show notes. The topics were things you can do right now to improve your happiness and lessons about success that we can learn from Game of Thrones. And I had a comment, I think it was on Twitter, it might have been Facebook, where somebody said, wow, I didn't know Darryl liked Game of Thrones. He should definitely be president. So, that was kind of cute. And that sort of ties in with the fairly lengthy question that I have this week. Let me jump into that. The person sent this via email. They said, I am at Refined Liberty on Twitter and a massive fan of yours and of liberty in general. I've recently converted from a regular libertarian, or rather regular libertarianism, to full-fledged anarcho-capitalist voluntarist thought, and I have a question for you. And this should be, I have several questions for you. And Refined Liberty, thank you for the email, and I will answer all of these questions. First question is, do you plan on running in any more elections for local levels, say state rep or state senator, or even running for president again? What are your goals for that? And secondly, what would you say is the best way to spread the ideas of liberty to a public who is not receptive to them at all? So let me begin with the first part of this. Do I plan on running for local election in the future, possibly state rep or state senator? And I will say that as of right now, I am very strongly considering running for state rep in 2 years, in 2018. And I'm talking with a friend of mine about possibly running for state rep together. And you might be thinking, but why would you run against your friend? Well, see, here in New Hampshire, where I live, we have multi-member districts. So some of the districts are multi-member districts, meaning that you elect more than one person to represent that district. One of the districts that I'm in, and yes, I said one of the districts, I'll explain that a little further, but one of the districts that I'm in elects 2 state reps. The other district that I'm in elects 1 state rep. The district that elects 2 state reps has a larger geographic area and also has more people in it. So allow me to explain how it is that I have 3 state representatives from 2 different districts. So New Hampshire has the largest state legislature in the country, and it's one of the largest legislative bodies in the world. I believe only the U.S. House of Representatives, the British House of Commons, and the Indian Parliament are larger, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I do know that it is the largest non-national legislative body in the English-speaking world, with 400 members of the state House of Representatives. So, because there are so many people in the legislature, to divide that among the roughly 1.3 million people that live in New Hampshire means that you have 1 state rep for every roughly 3,300 people. Well, what they've done, because not every precinct or voting ward is divided amongst 32 or 3,300 people, they have set it up to where they have what are called flotoral districts. So the city of Keene, where I live, has about 25,000 people. And so what they have done is they have 5 wards in the city. So there's 1 state rep that represents each ward. And then there's some overage. And so they have said, all right, the city as a whole gets 2 state representatives on top of the 5 that represent each ward. So I have 3 state representatives, 1 that represents my ward, 2 that represent the city. So I'm strongly considering running for that flotoral district in 2018, and I'll answer the rest of those questions when we come back here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Hi, I'm Nick Hazelton from the Anarcho-Yakutalism podcast, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I'll finish answering these questions momentarily, but first, I've got a question for you. Are you fed up with the government running every aspect of your life? You are? Good. Follow up. Are you listening to the Lava Flow podcast yet? No? What is wrong with you? Go right now to thelavaflow.com/listen. The Lava Flow podcast, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Subscribe today using any podcatcher at thelavaflow.com/listen. or just go back to sucking up to the government. The Lava Flow podcast and the Lava Spurt, striking the root every episode. Yes, I said the Lava Flow podcast and the Lava Spurt. The Lava Spurt being the shorter weekly podcast being produced by my friend, Mr. Roger Paxton of the Lava Flow podcast. So, again, thelavaflow.com/listen. Jumping back into answering the question about plans on running for other elections in the future, possibly state rep. So, as I mentioned, where I live in Keene, I have 3 state reps in 2 districts, and I'm thinking of running. And yes, I would run as a libertarian because I want absolutely nothing to do with either the Republicans or the Democrats. So that means that I would need to gather a sizable number of signatures to wind up getting on the ballot. And it helps if you have somebody helping you gather those signatures. So, again, I'm talking with a friend right now about the possibility of running for state rep in 2 years. Of course, we would be campaigning together. We would be helping one another get on the ballot. And hopefully winding up, having some sort of impact in the election results. And that brings up the second question. Actually, let me answer the second part of this first question about do I plan on possibly running for president again. At this point, I have no plans to do so. There were some people at the Libertarian National Convention over Memorial Day weekend that were asking me if I would run again in 4 years, and I will tell you what I told them. If someone were to create a draft committee, and yes, there are legal reasons why draft committees exist, and so what I said is if someone were to create a draft committee, draft Darryl to run for president committee, and that committee raised between $50,000 to $80,000 at a minimum over the next 2 years, I would strongly consider running again in 2020. At this point, I have no plans to do so. And at this point, I plan on supporting Adam Kokesh in his run in 2020. But again, I will throw it out. If someone created a draft committee and that draft committee raised, again, a minimum of $50,000 to $80,000 over the next 2 years, I would strongly consider running. Otherwise, no, I will not be running in 4 years, and I have no plans to run in the future after that. So 2024, 2028, not planning on it at this time. But again, things could change, and you never really know. Second question, again, comes from an email from someone on Twitter at Refined Liberty. He says, what are your goals for that, meaning future political runs? And my goals for every time I've ever run for political office, the goal has been the same. The goal has been to spread the ideas of liberty and get out a message. The goal for me has never to actually, the goal has never been to actually get elected to office. Now, would it be great and amazing to have an actual libertarian running as a member of the Libertarian Party in the New Hampshire legislature? Yes, it would. However, I think that, even not being a member of the legislature, I am still having an impact because of some of the things that I'm doing. And one of the things that I've been doing over the last couple of years is attending a lot of legislative committee hearings. I have a better attendance record as just a regular person to the election law committee than half of the people that are elected representatives serving on that committee. And something that I officially started doing after about a week and a half after the Libertarian Convention, again, over Memorial Day weekend, is I set up a lobbyist firm, and I am now an official lobbyist for liberty. You can learn more about that at libertylobby.xyz or libertylobbyist.xyz. So what I'm doing is, unlike most lobbyists where they wind up, trying to find one or two big money people to throw money towards them, I'm looking for not special interest, not even, like anything necessarily special. I'm looking for regular people that want represented. Regular people that love the ideas of liberty, that wish that there was somebody in Concord, because that's where I am. I'm in New Hampshire, and it makes sense because, as they say, all politics is local. It makes sense to try to affect change at the local level. I see absolutely no silver lining around the storm cloud that is national level politics. So my goal is to focus on local level issues, state level issues, where things are more likely to wind up having a chance to succeed. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for people like you that support liberty, that are willing to throw $5 or $10 a month, or even just a one-time $10 contribution to help me reach the goal of $5,000 per year. That's not a lot of money. That's like, barely over $400 a month that I'm seeking to raise to basically offset my cost to where I can afford to do more of what I've already been doing for the last couple of years. And as a couple of people have said, even if I don't reach the goal, I'm still going to wind up doing it because I'm doing this not out of, some sense of I can get rich trying to be a lobbyist for liberty. No. I'm doing this because I actually think that, by going to Concord and testifying on legislation or testifying against legislation or working with state reps to write legislation, that I can affect change. So I'm going to go up as often as possible, whether I get the $5,000 per year or not. But your contributions do help. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? Will anybody care? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
So again, libertylobby.xyz is where you can go to learn more about my lobbying efforts. And again, that's just part of what I'm trying to do to spread the ideas of liberty. And that goes into the final question here. Again, these questions came in via email. And you can send your questions via email as well, and I will answer those every Wednesday, AMA at fppradio.com. To recap, the first question was, do you plan on running in any more elections for local levels, state rep, state senate, etc., or ever running for president again? Strongly considering running for state rep in 2018. No plans at this time to run for state senate. Again, no plans to seek the presidential nomination of the Libertarian Party. Again, although I did lay out a plan, or not necessarily a plan, but a set of circumstances, if you will, under which I would strongly consider running for president again. And the goals, as always, are to spread the ideas of liberty, to promote the ideas of liberty, and to bring some topics to the discussion that are not necessarily being talked about. And one thing that I find very interesting, talking about this real quick before I go into the final question, is if you go back and you look at the different presidential debates that happened within the Libertarian Party from, I think it was October of last year when the first debate happened down in Massachusetts, to the first major debate, quote unquote, that happened at the Alabama-Mississippi Libertarian Party convention in Biloxi at the end of February, through the various debates that happened throughout March and April and early May, to that final debate that happened the night before the presidential nomination at the Libertarian Convention, you will see a shift in the rhetoric. And the shift did not come from Darryl. The shift came from everybody else, except for one person, all shifting to sound a little bit more like Darryl. There were topics that I brought up that nobody else was talking about. There was nobody else talking about giving a full pardon to Ross Ulbricht. There was nobody else talking about giving a full pardon to Private Chelsea Manning. There was nobody else until the very end that was talking about legalizing everything like tomatoes. But at the very end, you had several people that were talking about the legalize like tomatoes thing. And one of the candidates actually would wind up saying, and I got this idea from Darryl. But, yeah, most of the other candidates, they all started, shifting their rhetoric to sound more radical, to sound more libertarian. And, unfortunately, the candidate that wound up getting the nomination isn't sounding so libertarian, which is part of why I cannot vote for that candidate. And I often get asked the question, who are you going to vote for? And at this point, I am still completely undecided whether I'm going to write in none of the above or whether I'll just write myself in. So if you have thoughts on that, send those to thoughts@fppradio.com. Jumping now into the final part of this question, he says secondly, but it would actually be sort of the third question that he has here. What would you say is the best way to spread the ideas of liberty with a public who is not receptive to them at all? And I would say that, that this is one of those sort of questions that, on the one hand, there's not an answer for, because you can't give a blanket answer and say, this is how you spread the ideas of liberty. Because it depends. Are you talking about in a broadcasting sort of sense? And podcasting is not necessarily the same, but somewhat similar to where you're talking to a broad audience. I'm recording these words, and I have absolutely no clue who on the other end is going to be listening to what I say. Are you talking about in a narrowed marketing sort of sense to where you're sending an email to somebody and you know exactly who is receiving the message? Are you talking about having one-on-one conversations with people, or are you talking about something else? And in each of those situations, there's going to be different ways that you would present the ideas. Now, I'm not saying that you change your message, but there are different ways that you can sort of say the same thing, if you will. That's one of the reasons that I will give the example of legalize everything like tomatoes. And if you've never heard the tomatoes example, allow me to share it with you now. Nobody that I know of would try to argue that tomatoes are illegal. However, based on my personal research, I have not found statutes anywhere that specify that tomatoes are either legal or illegal to possess. Now, somebody did wind up sending me a regulation out of, I think it was Florida, to where there was some agricultural regulation. But again, there's no laws on how many tomatoes you can possess. There's no laws on or regulations on how many tomato plants you can purchase when you go to the grocery store. No laws or regulations on how many tomato seeds you can buy when you go to the grocery store or to the seed store or wherever it is that you would buy your tomato seeds. But in states like Colorado and Washington and now Oregon and Alaska, where they claim that they legalized cannabis like wine, Well, there's no regulations in those states on how much wine you can purchase at a time, but there are regulations on how much cannabis you can purchase at a time. I'll continue the tomatoes example in the closing moments here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Why do they hate us? Is libertarianism compatible with Islam? Davi Barker answers these questions and more in Voluntary Islam and Other Essays. He advances the voluntarist cause with analysis of the confluence of values between Islam and libertarianism, as well as contemporary movements from the Tea Party to the Arab Spring. Voluntary Islam by Davi Barker is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry, online at fppradio.com.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So I'm giving you the tomatoes example of liberty. And feel free to use this however you want. I claim no copyright over the creation of the tomatoes example of liberty. And I really like that term, by the way, the tomatoes example of liberty. And the reason I give this example, again, there are all kinds of regulations on, especially in the states where, you know, they have supposedly legalized cannabis. Colorado and Washington, the lie was legalize it like wine. But if you go to the liquor store or the grocery store, they're not going to say, I'm sorry, sir, but you can only have 4 bottles of wine. You can only purchase 4 bottles of wine. You can only have 7 grape plants in your yard. But there are regulations on how many cannabis plants you can have in Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Alaska. There are some states that have decriminalized possession, and they'll allow you to have a certain number of plants before it becomes a criminal penalty. But there are no such regulations on tomatoes. There's, again, no limits on the number of tomato plants that you can grow in your backyard. There are no limits on the number of tomatoes that you can buy when you go to the store. There's no limits on how much ketchup you can buy. Now, I don't know why anybody needs that 5-gallon drum of ketchup that you can purchase from someplace like Costco, but you're allowed to do that. There's no regulations on that. You can buy all of the 5-gallon drums of ketchup that you want at Costco. Well, assuming that Costco has as many 5-gallon drums as you want to buy, but there's no regulation prohibiting you from doing that. But with other things, especially things like cannabis, there are regulations on the amount of substance that you can have or grow or buy or possess or sell at any given time. And when you start, looking at things of, wait a second, maybe consenting adults should be able to sell things to one another without interference. Maybe everything should be as legal as tomatoes. Maybe I should be able to go to the farmer's market and set up my stand and sell cannabis to people that want to buy it without interference, the same way somebody can sell their tomatoes or their cucumbers, even though cucumbers are absolutely disgusting and there's nothing redeeming about a cucumber at all. But at least you can take a tomato and turn it into ketchup and put it on a hot dog. That's really the only redeeming factor about tomatoes, is you can make it into sauce and it's good. Everything should be as legal as tomatoes. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Don't forget, every Wednesday I answer your questions. Send those over ama@fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copyheart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas, which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.